All right. Hello, everybody. My name's Elizabeth Clark, and I'm a designer on the Platform UX team.
I'm co-founder Parker Harris. No. I'm Chris Gray. I'm a developer on the Lightning Tools team.
All right, and before we get started talking about the component library, just a quick reminder to make sure you make your purchasing decisions based off of what is currently in the product today. So right now, you're going to learn about how you can make Lightning components much easier to implement. Last release, we reached out to the development community and we got tons of feedback from you on how we can improve your experience. What we did was we took all of that information and put it into 3 separate buckets for us to focus on. Now these 3 buckets are, 1, of course, you want to easily be able to find the component you're looking for. Then after you find the component, you want all the relevant information in one place. And then finally, you also want to be able to play around, tinker with that component, and make sure that it meets your needs. So we realized that this required a dedicated effort. So we formed a team from some of our top developers to help solve these issues. So we have the Lightning tooling team. And you may already be familiar with the Lightning tooling team from some awesome features that have already been released, such as the Lightning Inspector, which you can already get from the Chrome Web Store. Now with the Lightning Inspector, if you're on a Lightning page, you can inspect it and it shows you every single component on that page, as well as the load time and a bunch of other really helpful information for you to debug your code. Today, however, we're going to be talking about the component library. So how many of you know what the component library is? Not bad. Did you hear about it from the developer session today? Yes? All right, awesome. We got a nice little shout out. All right, so for those of you who don't know, the Lightning Component Library is a site that houses all the relevant information regarding component implementation. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and dive into the component library. So the first issue that you guys were telling us about was that it's really kind of a pain to find the component that you need. So the first thing we did was to beef up our quick find. So we've added the interfaces and events. So if you know the name of your component, all you have to do is type it in and you get access to that component instantly. Now, we've also added this other awesome feature called the comprehensive search. And this is a wonderful search that you get if you're authenticated, and I'll talk about authentication in just a little bit. But so if you're authenticated, what this search does is it goes through most of the information on the detail page. So that means even if you don't know the name of the component you're looking for, as long as you have some relevant information, you can still find it very quickly. And then the next issue that we were seeing was that information was spread out over many, many different sites. So what we did, and this is the detail page on the component library, is we took all that information that was spread out everywhere and we put it in this one section on the detail page. So here you get all your methods, all your attributes, all the documentation, specifications, even a full set of all the variables or all the different variations of the components along with the code. So now you could take this code here and copy it and paste it directly into this new awesome feature that we're going to have coming out very shortly, which is the Developer Playground. Now the Developer Playground is very similar to JS Fiddle or CodePen.io, but it is specifically created for Salesforce. So what that means is you don't have to worry about permissions or packaging. Even a designer or admin could easily come in and change the attributes here, hit run, and you automatically, immediately see the update in the output screen. So going back to the authentication that I brought up earlier, This is something that not many people know about, but it's a very important part of the component library as it gives you a much richer experience. So not only do you get the comprehensive search, but you also get all of your custom components that you've created, as well as anything you've downloaded from the App Exchange, all in one place. So just by logging in, you get your own personalized component site. All right, so how do you get to this amazing place? Very easy. Go to developer.salesforce.com, go in the Resources tab, and it's right there. You can also follow this link we have here. We've also passed out cards that are on your seat with the URL, and we have some more up here if you didn't get one. And one last thing before I pass you over to Chris is Chris is going to be going over some of the key elements that I've just discussed, but he'll also be talking about some very helpful aspects of the component library, such as the Locker Service Console and the Locker Service API. And these are tools that really help us by making sure that our JavaScript is both secure and compatible with Salesforce. So on that note, I will pass you over to Chris.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you all for being here, especially so late on a Thursday at Dreamforce. I'm going to take you now over to the component library. As you see it now, this is actually on developer.salesforce.com, so you should be able to use this anytime. I'm going to walk you through some of what Elizabeth talked about, but mainly 3 different things. I want to tell you there's a lot of different ways that you can find what you're looking for. As you can see on here, we actually have over 157 different components that we're exposing to you. And so it's going to be hard to find that gold nugget in all of those different components. And so I'll take you through that. And then I'll also tell you, walk you through all of the information that you'll get once you've found that component you're looking for. And we're going to dig into some of that information. And then lastly, we'll walk you through the Locker Service tools that Elizabeth just shared with you and kind of how that helps you optimize your components with Locker Service and to best use those. So as we said, last release for the component library, we had a component, event, and interfaces tab. We've consolidated those, and now it's really easy to get a clear picture of everything that you might want to use in the bundles. So over here in the quick find, I'll search for Chatter, and you can see that I have interfaces, events, and several components at my disposal. But that might not be sufficient, and so we're also showing you a cascade of components here on the component overview page, but we have this filter section. And in the filter section, you can limit the components you're going to see here by the different categories. And so for categories, I really like this one. I think, in particular, the API section has a lot of really, really powerful components that I don't think people are taking enough advantage of. And realistically, there's nowhere else you can get this list of components that are available to you in Lightning, and then being able to dig in these and see exactly how they're being used, or how they're to be used. For experiences now in the middle, we have a lot of different ways to enjoy Lightning. We have Lightning Experience, Salesforce Mobile, Salesforce Communities. And as developers, we need to be cognizant of that so that the components we use work in all those different contexts. So if we come in here, we have several different APIs, and then if we're only coding for Lightning Experience, we'll want to limit that to get rid of the few components that won't work in those contexts, particularly Salesforce Mobile, Lightning Snap-ins, that kind of stuff. For namespaces, there's 3 namespaces I want to really point out here. So let me get rid of these guys. So for the first namespace, Aura, it's going to have your language constructs, or if, or iteration. If you're new to Lightning, these may be new to you. Most people, they won't be new. But it still has all the spec and all the information and anything tricky that you might want to use for those components. For example, iteration has a start and an end on index, which is really cool that you wouldn't know about this. In here, you also have UI. Now, UI is getting deprecated. So you'll really want to be cognizant of the UI namespace and that these components you may not want to use, and there's some additional information that'll help talk to you about the deprecation cycle and whether that component's good for you. And then Lightning in particular, obviously most of you should know about Lightning. This is the namespace UI wanted to be. And this is where all the good stuff is now. Everything we expose is pretty much in Lightning, and so these filters really help you find that information. So let's say we found our component. We're going to use button because it's particularly colorful and fun. So you come in here now, and we have live examples. This is the actual example being run from the code down below. So if you change these, they actually update, and they're all running from this code that you can see. If you want to start playing with this, as Elizabeth said, you can come over here, copy it, paste it in the dev console, paste it in the playground eventually, wherever you do your development, and it's good to go. If you're not sure if this is the component for you, or you kind of want a little bit more information, you'll come into the documentation tab. This is our loose documentation for components that don't fit into a rigid reference. And so in particular, a lot of the Lightning components, particularly the base Lightning components, will have an SLDS equivalent. And so that link is provided in here as well. That'll tell you all about how this component got constructed, what its styles are capable of, and how it's spec'd to be used. It also has just rough stuff that doesn't fit into a reference, like eventing information, accessibility, that kind of stuff. And then we have the specification. Obviously, when I'm ready to use this component, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to look at what the attributes are, what are required. Obviously, on button, nothing's required. We have methods that I can call directly on it, and obviously those are super important. But I really want to point out some of this information up top here. And so, obviously, abstract, can I extend? Do I have to extend it? Extensible, can I extend it? Very important. But access in particular, obviously, everything you see on developer.salesforce.com is going to be access global. You can use everything here, obviously. If you go into your org, as Elizabeth said, well, some of that's not going to be access global. Anything that you wrote yourself may have a different access level specified. That'll show up here and be notable for the other developers in your organization, or if you package it, whether external customers who install your package can use it as well. And then support. Not everything we release, right, goes straight to GA. So there's quite a bit of beta components now that come out, and you'll just want to be aware that maybe or maybe not you want to use a component or wait for it to be GA. But we also specify or show here whether a component is deprecated. And so, as I said, we're deprecating the UI components. I would highly suggest you come in here and check whether it's deprecated. Usually when we do deprecate them, there's a component we want you to move to as well. And I would expect that to be in the documentation tab. So we already showed all that stuff. We already talked about the experience up in the top right. Obviously, in other words, just a reminder, be careful where you use the components. We try to get them to work everywhere, but a dialer component may not make sense in Lightning Out or Lightning Experience, and you just want to be cognizant of that. So lastly now, we have the locker tools. So take a second, but the logger tools we want to pull in because we want to really pull in everything. There is a lot of resources that Salesforce is writing, a lot of tools, and all of that stuff is going to come in here. If you are a Lightning developer, you're going to want to come here all the time, obviously for your reference, but all the time we're going to be putting new stuff in here, and so this is just step one. So for Locker Service, if you're not familiar with it, it's a framework that we provide which allows us to sandbox the code that one client runs from another client. And so you know that your component is basically limited to the API shape it expose. And if you have an input field in there, I'm not going to have a customer just reach into the DOM and just start grabbing stuff out of there. But obviously with that comes some challenges. We're sandboxing your code. We are shielding the DOM. We're doing a lot of things to prevent bad things from happening, but some libraries use these features and depend on them. So if I was going to use a library and want to know, can I use this thing in Lightning? Well, oftentimes you ask us, can I use this feature? And we say, we don't totally know. You're one of 50,000 libraries out there, and I can't validate that library. So what we've done is we provided you the Locker console. And what I would naturally do is say, I'm going to use this short little library, copy its code, paste it in here. Right below that, I would just call it and see what happens. Funny little demo, I'm not going to do all that. But maybe I'm going to say, my library depends on eval. Eval is an inherently insecure function of the browser, and naturally, I'm not sure if this is going to work. But if I come into Locker Console, do a little bit of math, since I'm writing a calculator, I can do it. See that with Locker off, I get a 2. I turn Locker on. If it's supported, I'll still get a 2. As of summer 18, we've exposed eval, so now we're good to go. This library that I'm using is going to work, except it also uses a resizer. All right, a little code, live code. So now I've called a resize observer. If I actually just return this thing, it'll actually show me in the console that it returned a resize observer. Totally fine. If I evaluate it, it says I cannot use resize observer. Maybe a mistake, but we'll see. Maybe I made a bad error with my code. And so at this point, what we would naturally do is we would go into the Locker API viewer. Now we would come in here and we'd say, hey, resize observer. Well, it says that naturally in the DOM, it's going to be specified as a function, but that last column says it's undefined. And so a resize observer is probably one of those features of the browser that we're really not going to be able to polyfill or secure or sandbox, just naturally based on its feature set. But if you come in here and observer, and you start looking around, you can see that reporting observer, performance observer, mutation observer, good to go, right? And so this will be the place that you'll want to come and check for those browser features. Even if you are unsure, after the browser console, you can get that information. You can see up top, we provide tabs for window, document, element. These are all the entry points to the DOM naturally, right? And so these are the areas that we've provided you that reference to see the information. And so for this release, those are the tools that we've added to the component library. Obviously, Elizabeth has shared that we're going to be doing the playground, which will also be coming soon to the component library. And there will be obviously any of those other features that we find in Salesforce for Lightning to be pulled in. And we're really excited to obviously be hearing from you guys what you need to be successful in Lightning so that we can put those in the component library. We'd heavily encourage you to contact us, me and Elizabeth, also our PM or our other team members, and we would love to hear anything else you guys have. And please take the cards, bookmark the component library. If it doesn't have what you have now, I'm betting in 2 or 3 short months we will have an amazing feature set for you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.